there's a lot of teams that when you go through the names and you go through the success, it's like, yeah, they're off. They're off my top 10. The one that we're going to talk about the most and will likely take up the teams that didn't make it, I'm like, okay, automatically, I will tell you, as you all know, I am not a Leafs fan. But that is not the reason why I left them off my list. I produced in Toronto sports radio for almost 25 years of my career. And so I was inundated with Leaf stuff, Leaf history, Leaf this, Leaf that. I met so many Maple Leaf alumni over my tenure. And what strikes me, and I'm like, okay, am I the irrational one? Or like, I understand the traditions. And at one time, the Toronto Maple Leafs were the greatest team on earth at one time. They had a wonderful dynasty of the 60s. 67 will always be cherished in that market. But then after that, what? There's just so many disappointments. There are so many failures. There is so much negative history that when you put it all in that pot, that jambalaya pot, I'm like, they have wonderful players, they've had good talent, but when you put them on a Mount Rushmore against a lot of these other teams, they just don't add it, the success just doesn't add up. They're great individual players. And here are the four players that I chose. I chose Dave Keon, who has been considered the greatest Maple Leaf by everybody who I trust. And they said he was the greatest Maple Leaf they've ever seen. Austin Matthews. Some would argue, well, he's his career 6-7 years old. He's the greatest player in the world right now with McDavid, and he's going to only get better. I put Matt Sundin, who many consider the second greatest Leaf of all time. And I did see Matt Sundin play a lot. And then, of course, Daryl Sittler, who really should have had more success, team success, but because of a crappy owner and Harold Ballard, that was never going to happen. And it's been well documented in documentaries. So those are the four. The point of it is, Howie, I didn't put them on this list because other than Dave Keon's 4 Stanley Cups, what have you seen? What have you seen?
Well, you have to go back, and I was reading a lot of Leafs history last night as I was researching this, and some of the history is really colorful. Some of it's pretty amazing. And my Mount Rushmore was Dave Keon, Hall of Fame in 86, 4 cups. He won the Calder in 63-64, 2 Lady Bings. He won the Conn Smythe in 66-67, 2-time All-Star. He's on the NHL's 100th anniversary team as well. Daryl Sittler, Hall of Fame in 89. He was an All-Star. He was also on the 100th anniversary team. One of Sidney Crosby's many nicknames is Daryl, and it's because of Daryl Sittler. That tells you a lot right there. Johnny Bower, Hall of Fame in 1976, 4 cups, 2-time Vezina winner. He was an All-Star. He was also on that 100th anniversary team. And he only made the Leafs when he was 33 years old. That's when he got called up. But he still amassed the second most minutes by any goalie in Leafs history. And availability is one of the greatest abilities that there is. And Johnny Bower, of course, one of the greatest goalies and one of the greatest human beings I think that any of us have ever met. My other one was Charlie Conacher, Hall of Famer in 1961. He won a cup. He was a 5-time All-Star. He was 2 times the leading point scorer in the league, 5 times the leading goal scorer in the league. And of course, he's on that 100th anniversary team of the NHL as well. And those are my 4 guys. And I have a list, and I showed you that list yesterday.
It was insane.
Honorable mentions. And we could do a show just on my honorable mentions for the Leafs. But there you go, Leaf fans. You can throw rocks now.
There are going to be teams that we're going to talk about, and they're like, there's no way they're that low, or there's no way that this team's ahead of my team. And I
Oh,
know Leaf fans, trust me, we know a lot of them. And it's not, I'm just looking at this without the rose colored glasses. I'm looking at it from a perspective of when you go through the history of these other teams, and that's part of the problem. We always used to call it the Leafs bubble, that it would be from from one end of the city to the other, and nothing else exists outside of that bubble in terms of sports or life in society. Um, when you compare those names, and by the way, your list is very good, uh, and that's going to be the other argument. It's like, well, why did you not put that guy on your
well, of
list?
course. I mean, you were saying before that we started doing the show, why is Matthews not on your list? And I looked at a whole bunch of different guys. I mean, as I said, my honorable mentions are a page long on their own,
Yeah,
and I write small. It's
yes, you do.
but
Well, the Matthews thing, I look at this. He right now he is the first or second best player in the world,
yeah,
depending on who you talk to. He is setting records, club records. He's breaking his own records every year now. The only thing that he's missing is team cup success.
even team playoff success.
Well, that's what I mean. Like they're one and done, or they'll get to a second round and they're done.
Yeah,
Um, that's why Matt Sundin, at least he got to a couple of conference championship series. That's as close as they've got. But yeah, if you look at the overall body of work of when they did it, I just feel the Leafs do not deserve a top 10 ranking.